Thank you all. We enjoyed that very much. Thank you. Outstanding. All right, we will go to the calendar. Gentleman from Jefferson, Mr. Harness. For what purpose?
Introduction, Mr. Speaker.
You're recognized.
Ladies and gentlemen in the South Gallery, please make welcome employee of Russ College and childhood friend of mine, Dr. April Stampley.
Gentleman from Oktibbeha, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm trying to get her attention before she leaves out. I wanted to recognize Miss Shalia Outlaw, who was a part of that choir from Starkville, Mississippi. She's one of my constituents, her grandparents, the great Marquita and John Outlaw. Please give her a round.
Thank you, gentlemen. Lady from Lincoln, Miss Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the South Gallery, I'd like to introduce, along with Representative Vince Mango, our Sheriff, Steve Rushing.
Gentleman from Copiah, Mr. Holloway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the South Gallery, also from Russ College, I'd like to introduce the Vice President for Institutional Advancement, Ms. Luann Baker. Help make her welcome.
Gentleman from Harrison, Mr. Hullum.
Introduction out of order, Mr. Speaker.
You're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, in the North Gallery, we have our judge, Allison Baker, the Harrison County Court Judge, and with her have our Chief Assistant District Attorney from Harrison, Hancock, and Stone County. One of the most important things about our ADA, the things that we vote on here on this floor, when we talk about fentanyl, we talk about gangs, we're talking about the gloss switches. Our ADA is a champion of that. Not only do he champion the victims, he also champion the people who was accused to make sure they get their day in court. And let's please help them welcome a family team that's on the right side of justice and doing right by all people. Thank you all.
Gentlemen, that's one of his old football teammates that handed him that resolution up there. Did you know that?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. There's another one sitting right next to me.
I'm well aware. I was going to ask you that next, but you're ahead of me on all that. All right, gentleman from Marshall, Mr. Faulkner.
Introduction, Mr. Speaker.
You're recognized.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House, help me make welcome the President of Russ College, President Robert Dixon. Make him feel welcome.
Welcome. Good to have you here today. All right, we'll go to the calendar. Motion to reconsider calendar, I believe. Gentleman from Rankin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to go item number 1, Senate Bill 2453, and move to reconsider the vote by which it passed.
All right, if you favor the gentleman's motion to reconsider the vote by which Senate Bill 2453 passed, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr.
Bill's
Speaker.
back before the House, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to go to the amendment and make the same motion.
You're wanting to reconsider the vote by which the amendment
passed. Yes, sir.
We only had one amendment pass, and that's the one you...
We had one on the floor. We had a committee sub, but one on the floor.
All right, gentleman's motion is to reconsider the vote by which amendment passed. If you favor that motion, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The amendment is back before us. Gentleman from Hines, Mr. Bell, for what purpose?
Explain the amendment.
Yes, I will.
Ask afterwards. Thank you.
Right. We passed the amendment and I allowed it to go through, but it actually muddies up the bill. There is a part in the bill that already covers the receivership, and if they go through the receivership properly and there's money left over, then Holly Springs would be able to recover their assets or the money for the assets. So it muddied the bill up rather than clarified the bill.
explain the amendment, and then I'll ask afterwards.
All right, I'm sorry. The amendment was if this goes through receivership, that any money that Holly Springs had put into the utility lines and so forth, they could recover the assets. But that was the amendment, and we were trying to help them out. But turns out on line 72 and 73, we already have that mechanism in place.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Further questions on the amendment? Gentleman from Marshall, Mr. Faulkner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman Yield.
Yes, sir.
I don't have the bill in front of me. You say on line 71 and 72?
70, hang on, let me tell you right. 72 and 73.
Can you tell me what it says?
It says the receiver shall be compensated from the assets of the system in the amount to be determined by the court. That was so we've already got the mechanism that you had tried to put in there. It's in the existing law.
So, Mr. Chairman, with this language, the receiver, who is that? Who are they speaking about?
A court-appointed receiver. Should it come to that, be a court-appointed receiver.
So tell me, how does that language ensure that the monies from the assets being sold will go back to the city? I don't quite understand how.
Well, the receiver would be paid first, then the cost of the liquidation itself, any experts, and I'm reading from my attorneys, after any of the money is left over, then it will be paid to Holly Springs. That's in existing law with the receiver part on line 72 and 73. So the court would appoint a receiver. That receiver would go through the process. If it determined that the assets needed to be sold, they would pay the receiver for their time, and then any money left over would be going to Holly Springs.
Who's going to determine the value of the assets?
The court system, and then the receiver. They're going to hire an expert receiver. I mean, I couldn't tell you. I don't know what a power line's worth, but they'll have all that information with the receiver.
So, Mr. Chairman, can you see a scenario where the city of Holly Springs would dispute what some body that the judge appoints to determine the value of the system? Can you see how they can dispute that, and we can end up in litigation?
I could see that in any receiver case over anything. I could see where there'd be a dispute. Sure.
So I guess my concern is if that should happen, the intent of the bill is to help the customers back home, right?
Correct.
Have a reliable, sustainable service and power. But if this can end up in court for the next decade, tell me, how are we then helping the customers back home?
Well, it's just a mechanism we're trying to put in place to help them. I mean, if it goes to court, it goes to court. We can't stop that. We pass numerous bills that go to litigation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman from Hines, Mr. Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman Yield.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, we had about an hour and a half discussion on this particular bill yesterday, last week, and we're still seemingly having a lot of confusion in understanding this particular bill. Don't you think we need to probably go back to the table and do a little more work on this so we can make it plain to all of us?
No, sir.
Well, there are a lot of questions being asked that you can't answer.
I've answered all these questions. We debated for an hour and a half, got questions asked.
Well, a lot of unknowns, and I'm saying still existing.
I disagree with you.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any further questions. Gentlemen, the amendment, which was actually Amendment 3 to the strike all amendment, it's back before us. Is this a motion to table the amendment, or you?
Motion to table that amendment.
Okay, those opposed have 5 minutes. Anyone wish to speak to the gentleman's motion to table? You have 5 minutes. I don't see anyone seeking recognition. If you favor, gentlemen, anything further?
No, sir.
If you favor the gentleman's motion to table the amendment, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The amendment's tabled. Anything further on the bill, gentlemen?
Final passage.
Gentleman moves final passage. Gentleman from Marshall, Mr. Faulkner, for what purpose? For what purpose,
I want to
gentlemen?
raise a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
State your point of order.
In this amendment, it speaks about the monies going back to the municipality or nonprofit. Is that given a gratuity that will call for a 2/3 vote?
I don't know. I bet your gentleman, senior gentleman from Holmes could probably answer that question. But why don't you bring your point of order forward in writing, and we'll deal with it. Thank you. We'll suspend business on that bill and move on to the calendar. We'll come back to it after we get that in writing. All right, Chairman of the Rules. He passes. Appropriations. Chairman of Appropriations. Gentleman from Jackson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Limited to the House. Let's go to the appropriations calendar. And this time I'd like to bring up the chairman of Appropriations Committee E to explain his bills.
Gentleman from Montgomery, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, call up House Bill 1949, make the usual motions.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read a third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the bill, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is comes from the appropriation of ARPA funds. This is appropriating to the Department of Finance and Administration for the purpose of defraying eligible administrative and reporting expenses in the amount of $25 million. And that's an explanation of the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Questions on the bill? I don't see any, gentlemen.
Move final passage.
He moves final passage. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 116 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Go to House Bill 1950, call it up, make the usual motions.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this too deals with coronavirus fiscal funds. This is an act making additional appropriation from the Coronavirus Fiscal Recovery Fund to the Department of Finance and Administration Bureau of Buildings, Grounds, and Real Property Management for allowable capital projects. And that's an explanation of the bill, Mr. Speaker. It is in the amount of $26,687,307. And that's an explanation. I yield for any questions.
Questions on the bill? I don't see any, gentlemen.
Final passage.
He moves final passage. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 118 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you would move to item 1951, House Bill number 1951, call it up, make the usual motions.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an act making an additional appropriation to the State Department of Health for the purpose of funding the ARPA Rural Water Association Infrastructure Grant Program. It comes in at the amount of $50 million, and that's an explanation of the bill, Mr. Speaker. I yield for any questions.
Questions on the bill? I don't see any, gentlemen.
Final passage.
He moves final passage. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 119 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to House Bill 1952. Call it up. Make the usual motions.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, bill considered engrossed, read the third time, placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1952 makes an additional appropriation to the Department of Public Safety for the purpose of purchasing eligible equipment for the law enforcement officers employed by and through the Mississippi Department of Public Safety in the amount of $3,500,000, and that's an explanation of the bill, Mr. Speaker. I yield for questions.
Questions on the bill? I don't see any, gentlemen.
Move final passage.
He moves final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote 119 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Anything further, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Speaker, if I could get unanimous consent, I would like to move down the calendar to item number 7 while I'm at the well and go ahead and handle those next two bills, items 7 and 8.
Is there objection? Hearing none, gentlemen, we will do that. You're recognized.
Yes, sir. Mr. Speaker, if you could call up item number 7, Senate Bill 2840, make the usual motions.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill simply authorizes the Mississippi Arts Commission to retain 1% administrative fees on awarded projects funded through the commission, and that's an explanation of the bill, Mr. Speaker. I yield for questions.
Questions on the bill? I don't see any, gentlemen.
Final passage.
He moves final passage. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote 118 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to item number 8, Senate Bill 2848. I call that bill up, make the usual motions, and move adoption of the strike-all amendment.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Gentlemen, you going to explain the strike-all?
I will, yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, sections 1 through 12 of Senate Bill 2848 bring code sections forward involved in ARPA-related distribution of funds, and Section 13 is the directs the state fiscal office to transfer the following amounts to the coronavirus state fiscal recovery fund from the following funds. DEQ Municipal County Water Infrastructure Fund, $28,557,785. Hospital Sustainability Grant Program, $6,850,000. CPS, $15,607,348. Trial Judges, CPS, $1.5 million. Mental Health, $29,384,500. Office of the Mental Health Coordinator, $18,250,000. Trial Judges for temporary courts is $1,589,094. And Law Enforcement and Firefighter Premium Pay, $3,448,580 for a total of $105,187,307. And this does include a reverse repealer. And that's an explanation of the bill, Mr. Speaker. I yield for questions.
Questions on the strike-all? Don't see any.
Move adoption.
Gentleman moves the adoption of strike-all amendment 1. If you favor that motion, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Strike-all is adopted. Anything further on the bill, gentlemen?
Final passage, Mr. Speaker.
He moves final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 119 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Gentleman from Knoxville, Mr. Mickens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, on both sides of the gallery, we have a group of fine people from Winston County, Louisville, Mississippi, which are my constituents in District 42. And there we have Bessie Love, Herbert Nicholson, Lynn Whitley, Norris Suttle, Betty Cooper, Shirley Gladney, Cynthia Nicholson, Linda Pryor, and Gwen Coleman. Help me make them feel welcome today at their capital.
Welcome to you all. Gentleman from Jackson, you're recognized for further work.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, let's go down to, on the appropriation calendar, item number 5, and I would like to recognize the Vice Chairman of Appropriations A, lady from Amit, to explain her bills.
Lady from Amit, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to go to item number 5, Senate Bill number 2285. Call it up and make the usual motion.
Lady calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. I believe you have a strike all, lady.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I do.
You're recognized to explain that strike all.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the strike all for Senate Bill 2285 is actually the House Bill 874, which is the comparison bill to Senate Bill 2285. All it's doing is bringing the code sections forward related to officer salaries for the Department of Public Safety. This is just code sections only, and again, this is the comparison bill, which is House Bill 874. And that's an explanation of the strike all.
Questions on the strike all? Don't see any. If you favor the adoption of the strike all amendment 1, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Strike all is adopted. Anything further on the bill, lady?
No, Mr. Speaker, I move final passage.
Lady moves final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 119 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, lady.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to go to item number 6, Senate Bill 2844. Call it up and make the usual motion.
Lady calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized, lady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This strike all is for the variable compensation plan. And actually, we had a comparison bill, which is House Bill 1355. If you may recall, all this is doing is just saying that the legislature, in consultation with the State Personnel Board, is going to set the salary funding levels for each agency. It's effective upon passage, and the strike all is just our House bill. That's an explanation of the strike all, Mr. Speaker.
Questions on the strike all? Don't see any, lady. Question occurs on the adoption of strike all amendment 1. If you favor the amendment, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Strike all is adopted. Anything further on the bill?
No, Mr. Speaker, I move final passage.
Lady moves final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 118 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, lady.
Mr. Speaker, I go to item number 9, Senate Bill number 2468. Call it up and make the usual motion.
Lady calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized, lady.
The strike all is actually the end of session transfer bill. We're just bringing forward the code section so we can have something as we work throughout the process and get into conference. So the strike all is actually House Bill 1705, which we passed earlier in the session, and that's an explanation of the strike all, Mr. Speaker.
Questions on the strike all? Don't see any. Question occurs on the adoption of strike all amendment 1. If you favor the amendment, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Strike all is adopted. Anything further on the bill, lady?
No, Mr. Speaker. I move final passage.
Lady moves final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 119 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, lady.
Mr. Speaker, I'll go to item number 10, Senate Bill 2825. Call it up and make the usual motion.
Lady calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized, lady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This strike all is actually revising certain fiscal year 2024 appropriations and funding authority and transfers. We had a companion bill, which is House Bill 1704, which is actually the strike all. And for instance, the Autism Board was in this bill. This is, in the House Bill 1704, which is in the strike all. Alcorn State University, the state aid road construction. So this is the same bill, same language that we passed in House Bill 1704 that's in the strike all. And that's an explanation of the strike all, Mr. Speaker. I'll yield for any questions.
Questions on the strike all? Don't see any. Question recurs on the adoption of strike all amendment 1. If you favor the amendment, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Strike all is adopted. Anything further, lady?
No, Mr. Speaker. I move final passage.
She moves final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay.
Thank you.
Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 119 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, lady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to go to item number 11, Senate Bill 2846. Call it up and make the usual motion.
Lady calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized, lady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, the strike all is actually House Bill 1707, which is the companion bill. This is the bill that we have that has all of our local projects in it from the 2023 session. And those projects are still in the bill. I would just like to note for the body that in addition to those projects that were in House Bill 1707 that we passed earlier in the session, there is a paragraph in here that includes the project for the Marty Stewart Congress of Country Music Museum, and also there is an additional language in here to correct that the money that was appropriated last year for a short line railroad is actually going to the town of Gloucester. There is no money in this bill. This is just a technical correction bill that changes some of the names for maybe a municipality or an organization that the funds that were appropriated last year were supposed to go to. And that's an explanation of the strike all. It's effective upon passage. Again, this is just House Bill 1707, the companion bill.
Questions on the strike all? Don't see any. Question occurs on the adoption of strike all amendment 1. If you favor the amendment, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Anything further, lady?
No, Mr. Speaker, I move final passage.
Lady moves final passage. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 119 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, lady.
Mr. Speaker, I have one bill left, and with unanimous consent, I'd like to go to item number 13, Senate Bill number 2487.
Is there objection? Hearing none, lady, we will follow that procedure. You're recognized for item 13.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to go to item number 13, Senate Bill number 2487. Call it up and make the usual motion.
Lady calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the bill, lady. I believe you have an amendment.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I do. I have an amendment. I'd like to explain it if that's fine.
You're recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you. The amendment just changes the reverse repealer date from June 30th, 2024 to June 29th, 2024, and that's an explanation of the amendment.
Questions on the amendment? Don't see any. Question occurs on the adoption of Amendment 1. If you favor the amendment, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment's adopted. Anything further on the bill, lady?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. This bill, Senate Bill 2487, is just bringing forward the Law Enforcement and Firefighters Death Benefit Trust Fund. That section for possible amendments is effective July 1st, 2024. We are told by the Department of Public Safety that in some instances when a law enforcement officer or a firefighter passes, that the family does not have the money to cover funeral expenses. By the time that the families receive the money from this particular fund, a lot of times the funeral has already occurred, and this would help families that need additional help with funeral expenses. And so we're bringing these code sections forward to try to work it through the process and see what we could do to help the families in conference. And that's an explanation of Senate Bill 2487, Mr. Speaker.
Questions on the bill? I don't see any, lady.
I move final passage.
She moves final passage. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 117 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies of the House, let's go to item number 12, and I recognize the Chairman of Appropriations Committee D to explain his bill.
Gentleman from Pike is recognized to explain the bill. Well, you want to call the bill up, gentlemen?
Yes, sir. I'd like to go. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go to item number 12, House Bill number 1916. Call it up, make the usual motions.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended. The bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We do have a committee sub.
Gentleman moves to adopt the committee sub for consideration in lieu of the original bill. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the committee sub, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, many of you who were here last session remember that we passed a hospital grant program for $103 million. Unfortunately, at the end of the session, we had to use ARPA funds, and as many of you know, in dealing with the ARPA criteria is a very challenging process. And I do want to commend the leadership at the Department of Health. They have done everything they could to get this money out to our hospitals as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, there are 11 hospitals that just cannot qualify under ARPA guidelines. So this bill sends money to those hospitals at $6.8 million. We did put a reverse repealer in this due to the fact there may be an additional 16 hospitals that are in the process of receiving their monies, but the accounting firms are having to approve that, and so we're just not sure if they're going to get approved or not. So this is just to make sure these 11 hospitals get the money they're due, and then also just in case we need to have this ARPA bill for further funds to send to hospitals. So that is an explanation of the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Questions on the committee sub? I don't see any.
Move final passage, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman moves final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Clerk. By a vote of 117 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Anything further, Mr. Chairman?
Appropriations yields the floor.
Thank you, gentlemen. Gentleman from Coahoma, Mr. Payden.
Introduction out of order, Mr. Speaker.
You're recognized, gentlemen.
If the House would help make welcome in the South Gallery from Clarksville, Mississippi, the St. Elizabeth Catholic School. Please stand, 5th grade class.
Welcome, young people. Good to have y'all here today. Gentleman from Madison, Mr. Blackman.
Thank you. I too have an introduction out of order, Mr. Speaker.
You're recognized.
House, if you would turn your attention to the North Gallery. We have with us some very special guests all the way from the City of Lights, Canton, Mississippi. We have Miss Angela Stewart, my cousin Miss Carol Blackman, and they have with them members of the Black Voters Matter Coalition from across the state. Make them feel welcome, please.
Welcome to you all. I'll recognize the gentleman from Tate, Chairman of Ways and Means, and I believe we will go to this supplemental calendar 1, which is a supplement you got for Ways and Means. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker, that is correct.
You are recognized.
Thank you. We would go, if the body would allow, that some of these, we're going to have to skip around a little bit because some of the committee subs are not ready, but I would go to item 16, House Bill 1988. I'd call that bill up and make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read the third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed no. The ayes have it.
We have a committee substitute, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman moves to adopt the committee sub for consideration in lieu of the original bill. All in favor say aye. Opposed no. The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the committee sub, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is otherwise known as the Children's Promise Act. It's a bill that we've passed multiple times over the last 5 years. And essentially what this does is been a very, very successful tax credit program. And this would add additional tax credits to this program. We had a hearing in Ways and Means last week that if some of you got to sit in on it, you saw some of the real lives that are being affected and some of the real state dollars that are being saved by these programs. And so this would increase it to a total aggregate of $48 million to be split between educational centers and foster care organizations. And that's an explanation of the bill.
Questions on the bill? Gentleman's got an amendment, I believe. Don't see any questions on the bill. I'll recognize the gentleman from Adams. You want to explain your amendment, gentlemen?
I got four. I have first.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this bill, the Promise Act, that the chairman has authored, is a good bill. I think the intent of the bill is great, and I've voted for the bill for the last 5 years. But it just came to my attention just this year that a bill that is designed to provide tax credit for foster children and for schools that deal with kids with disabilities and deal with special needs has become a bill that's provided just in the top 9 schools listed on this printout from the Department of Revenue. We're giving over $2.7 million just on the top 9 to schools that don't do any of those things. Schools like Hartfield Academy gets $397,800. MRA, $320. JA, $341,000. Brookhaven Academy, $272,000. Central Homes, $203. Park Lane, $196. The Children's Promise Act is designed to take care of foster children and designed for schools like the Magnolia Speech School. It's not designed to take public money and just hand it out to private schools. And so all I've done with these amendments is to try to get this bill, in my opinion, back to a place where it's taking care of foster children and taking care of children that we should be taking care of. And so in my first amendment, one of the things that happens in our current bill is that we put an additional $6 million that actually doesn't go to foster children. This $6 million goes directly to the private schools. And so what my first amendment would do would for the calendar year 2024, additional credits in the aggregate amount of $6 million may be allocated for contributions to eligible charitable organizations and as described in Section 1B II. Those are just private schools. Those are not foster children. So I would say that we don't give that $6 million, keep that public money. And even though we have done, and the chairman will tell you this, we've done an incredible amount of good for public schools, I still think that until we fully fund public schools, every available dollar of public money should be spent with public schools, not with private schools. So that's all my amendment does.
I recognize the chairman to respond.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's unfortunate. We can stay here and play politics and talk about those kind of things if we want to. But the gentleman made many statements that are just not factual. There's not a dime in state appropriation dollars going to any schools out of this program. This is a tax credit program, and the gentleman stated what it was designed to do. I would hope that this body would give me some latitude because I drafted the bill and passed it 5 years ago. You're looking at the author of the bill. I know exactly what it was designed to do, and it was designed to create a tax credit program that would assist certain foster care organizations and educational institutions that are nonprofit that educate over 50,000 children in this state and assist those schools in many, many ways. We had a hearing last week in Ways and Means. It was announced on this floor. Everybody was invited. The gentleman asked questions. In fact, the gentleman asked questions of one of the presenters that he could get with her after because he was interested in the program that lady was talking about. Now, I respect the gentleman. Y'all know that. He and I go way back over the last 13 years. And he's got a job to do. I understand that. But what I'm telling you is that this is a program that has done tremendous good. It's been one of the most popular programs that this body has implemented over the last 5 years. And it has saved the state of Mississippi hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, period. And not one dime has been taken from public education to fund this program. Not one dime. In fact, over the last 5 years, we have increased this body, public education, by more than $500 million in the last 5 years in records amount. So not one person can say we're against public education because we support this bill. Those of you who have supported this bill, including the gentleman who said he's voted for it multiple times, need to continue to support it because it's a great program and it is helping people and it is saving taxpayer dollars. Now, when are we going to get to a point in this state where we're not for private education or we're not for public education, but we're for education, period, and educating more children better regardless of what that takes? So I'm going to ask you to oppose this amendment, and I'm going to ask you to oppose every single amendment because I know where they came from, and though they didn't come from this gentleman, they came from a place that's not truthful. And there's somebody that's playing politics. I'm not even going to give them the ability to say their name or the recognition there. So I'm going to ask you to oppose every single one of these amendments, and let's pass a great program, and let's keep doing good things for some of the children of Mississippi. Thank you.
I recognize the author to close on his amendment.
Thank you. The gentleman's right. I have voted for it. Before I became aware that the tax credit, that the people who are supposed to be benefiting from this tax credit are not the people who are really benefiting from the tax credit. If we're going to give tax credits, and I think the Magnolia, he's right, I was at the hearing, and everybody who testified, my amendments conform to the people who testified. The Magnolia Speech School deals with children with speech disorders, and they do a tremendous job. And I can't think of the name of every one of them, but every one of those people who testified, there was no MRA, there was no JA, there was no Jackson Prep, there was none of those. The people who testified were actually going out in the community finding people who needed help in educating those children. That's what they do. He's right. I did. And he's right. He brought people who could actually are the best representation of that program, which is why you'll see in my other amendments I want to be able to talk about funding people who take care of kids who at least qualify free and reduced lunch. Those are the people who testified at our hearing. People who took care of poor kids, kids who didn't have a way, who didn't have anybody looking out for them. That's what this bill was meant to do. I don't see the point in giving money or giving tax credits to people who are already wealthy, who already can afford to pay for those tuitions. That's all I'm saying. And I think I will again, these are my amendments. Of course, I'm like everybody else. I work with people all over the state. Some of the recommendations, some of the suggestions, some of the information did come from some other places. But these are mine. Trust me. I wouldn't be up here offering them if I didn't believe in them. And so all I'm asking you to do is let's get this program back to where it's supposed to be, taking care of foster children and for institutions to take care of children who really need it. And that's all I ask to do in this amendment. Thank you.
All right. Question occurs on the adoption of Amendment 1. If you favor the gentleman's amendment, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Noes have it. The noes have it. Roll call is demanded. There's an insufficient number. Next amendment, gentlemen. Lady from Hines, Ms. Yates, for what purpose?
I had a question on the amendment. I can ask it on the next amendment.
If you mash your button while he's explaining his amendment, you'll be allowed to ask him a question. Gentlemen, you're recognized for your second amendment. Okay.
Amendment number 3, it amended on line 65 by inserting has at least 50% enroll before children. This amendment is just what I just talked about. The people who testified, other than the Magnolia Speech School, everybody who testified were people who ran schools that dealt with disadvantaged children, children who needed the help, children who didn't have a way in any other, they didn't have an avenue to have their needs met. And these people are doing tremendous work. They should get the money. They should get the bulk of the money. But again, I don't think it was meant for Park Lane Academy. I don't think it was meant for Brookhaven Academy or any of these other ones. It was not meant for them, or MRA for that matter. So I would just suggest to you that the gentleman, the bill, the language of this bill ought to conform to the title, Children's Promise. We are talking about people who actually have the need. And so that's all my amendment does is conform to, make it conform to take care of poor children if we're going to provide tax credits.
Questions on the amendment? Lady from Hines, Ms. Yates.
Thank you. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
So I'm just trying to figure some of this out and hoping that you can help me. In looking at some of the language that you want to amend and that you've talked about, in looking at who's eligible for these programs and which schools they apply to, it has to be an eligible charitable organization, and that's defined in the language, right?
Right.
And those have to be an organization that's licensed or under contract with the Department of Child Protective Services, according to the language of the bill. Which of those schools that you read off aren't licensed under the requirements of the bill? I'm trying to figure out if I could have been writing off my son's tuition all this time and didn't know.
I mean, based on the way the bill is written, I think all of them would qualify. The name for every one of these private schools, the actual name is a foundation, a charitable foundation. For instance, I don't have it in front of me, Park Lane Academy is actually called Pike something Foundation. So, and Brookhaven Academy is the same way.
But they're all under contract with the Department of Child Protective Services?
I can't answer that question. As far as I know, they would have to be in order to qualify for this tax credit.
And the legislation or the existing law says, I mean, it lays out what they have to provide under that requirement. So, I mean, some of these schools, do you know whether or not they are or are not providing these services in addition to being a traditional private school?
One of the things, and I didn't offer this amendment, but one of the things that I wanted to offer is a study to determine whether or not they were actually providing these services. But nobody's made that clear to me. I don't have anything to show that they do, but in order to get the tax credit, they'd have to establish with the proper authorities that they are providing that, but nobody's provided that information.
So you don't have anything to show that they aren't either?
I do not.
And then the last question, I think, is also in existing law, it says that this only applies to voluntary cash payments. So would it apply to tuition payments that are made under a contractual basis?
I would think that, you know, there could be a legal way to define tuition payments as voluntary cash payments.
Well, let me know how.
I will. Thank you.
Gentleman from DeSoto, Mr. Eubanks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will gentleman yield?
Yes.
I think maybe you answered the question I was going to ask. Is the monies that are going to these private schools, are they, I guess they're not part of tuition for somebody that has a foster child? Is that what you're saying?
No, it has nothing to do with foster children.
But this isn't tuition monies, this is donations.
Yeah, these are donations. These are tax credits. They get, you know, somebody gets to write it off at the rate, which ends up, we know how that works. It ends up erring to the benefit of the institution.
Okay, I was just unclear as to whether or not this was for tuition payment credits.
No, it can be for anything. They don't, you know, okay. That's my understanding.
Thank you, gentlemen.
As long as they qualify under the parameters that the lady from Hines just described.
Don't see any further questions. I recognize the chairman to respond.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have told you my piece on this. This is a program that's existing. Again, there's not $1 in state money going here. This is not dealing with deductions for tuition. I'm sorry, it's a totally different issue than a tax credit. We try to focus, at least at my time as chair of the committee, we try to focus tax credit programs on programs that have a human benefit, who help people, and who save the state of Mississippi money. And that's exactly what this does. 50% of the bill deals with foster care organizations that keep children from entering state custody. Every child we can keep from entering state custody saves the taxpayers a tremendous amount of money. And on the school side, on the education, independent school, nonprofit side, there are over 50,000 kids in this state, children who are schooled that way. Some of them testified before the committee last week. If those 50,000 children entered the state public schools today, this body would have to find $350 million plus new dollars to educate those kids. So any little bit that we do to help these kids, which the law has been for years tailored to what they can use the resources for. It's not for tuition, it's only for educational resources on that side of it. Again, if you wanted to know the good that this bill's been doing, I invited you to the hearing last week, but please oppose the gentleman's amendment and let's move it forward.
Recognize the author to close on his amendment.
I just move passage of the amendment.
All right. Question occurs on the adoption of Amendment 3. If you favor the gentleman's amendment, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. Noes have it. Noes have it. Roll call is demanded. Maybe there's sufficient number. You don't have 10% standing up, and Dwan doesn't count. There's insufficient number. You have another amendment, gentlemen?
Yeah, I guess that 2.7 million wasn't impressive enough. I could talk about something else. Yeah, my amendment number 4, I will leave it offer.
You're recognized to explain.
Amendment number 4 would amend on line 225 and by striking 50% and putting 60%, and amend on 228 by making it conform the same way, by moving 50% and putting in 40%. And all this does is, right now, 50% of the money under this Children's Promise Act has to go to foster care. This just says at least 60% has to go to foster care. That'll still leave close to $19 million to go to these private schools. So I'm just trying, all this amendment does is say, if it's for foster children, at least let the first 60% go to the foster care program. That's all it does.
Questions on the gentleman's amendment? I don't see any. I'll recognize the chairman to respond.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll tell the gentleman, the author of the amendment, the percentages, and this is all based on the use and the attractiveness and how much the credits are used. And every single tax credit program we have, I look at them every single year, whether it's being used, whether it's not being used, and it's adjusted. And so that percentage is not something that's just pulled out of thin air. And you have my word that we will continue to look at it as it goes through the process, but it's based on the actual demand for the credits themselves. And so that's not, again, not pulled out of thin air. That's where that comes from. I would ask you to oppose the amendment.
Recognize the chairman to close on his amendment.
I hate to keep saying this. I think the Children's Promise Act, the intent and the import of what they're doing, and what the chairman has championed has been good. I just think that it ought to be better. It ought to do exactly what he intended to do, and it's not pulled out of thin air. If it was the tax credit for foster children, then they ought to get the majority of the money. It shouldn't be 50. I mean, for that matter, 50-50 sounds like it was pulled out of thin air. So I'm just suggesting to you that the bill ought to do what it is intended to do. And as much as I've blindly supported it and blindly watched, I gave you a total of $2.7 million going to private academies. It's more than that. I just gave you the top 9 figures. And so I just think that it's time for us to start just being, better stewards in terms of taking care of what we publicly should be taking care of. And that's all this bill does, is put more money into the foster care program. I ask for passage of the amendment.
All right. Question occurs on the adoption of Amendment 4. If you favor the gentleman's amendment, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. Noes have it. The noes have it. Roll call is demanded. There is sufficient number. Barely. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the amendment, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 34 yeas, 80 nays, the amendment fails. Anything further on the bill, gentlemen?
No, sir. I move final passage.
Gentleman moves final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. I'm sorry. Gentleman from Pike, Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, will you yield just a quick question?
Yes, sir. For you.
Thank you. Can you help me out with something? Some of the schools that the gentleman from Adams mentioned, can you tell us how many of those students are foster?
I can't as we sit here, but I'll try to get you some information on that.
Okay, so it's safe to say that we don't know how much of this money would be dedicated to foster kids in these schools that he mentioned.
Well, I mean, it would be different depending on which school we're talking about. I mean, there's probably some schools that it's 10%. Probably some schools are dang near 100%. I mean, it just depends on that particular school.
And we can't agree that these are all private schools, correct?
Well, they are nonprofit, 501c3 educational institutions.
Very carefully answered, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
All right, don't see anything further. Gentleman's move final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 101 yeas, 1 nay, the bill passes. Next item, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman might have got my agenda. Hold on one second. Mr. Speaker, I go to item 9, House Bill 1953. Call the bill up and make the usual motion.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read a third time, and placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
And we do also have a committee sub.
Gentleman moves to adopt the committee sub for consideration in lieu of the original bill. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the committee sub.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is, hold on one second. Thank you. This bill is really similar to the one we just discussed, except for another industry that has a human effect, tremendous human effect, saves lives as well. This is a tax credit program that would be a new program for our rural hospitals, is what this is. We all know the situation regarding our rural hospitals. In my research of this, we have found that there are approximately 60 hospitals across the state that are classified as rural. And so what this bill would do, similar to the Children's Promise Act that we just passed, would implement a 3-year phase-in of a tax credit program that would benefit our rural hospitals to try to keep them afloat and try to make them better and just try to help them. Every one of these hospitals, in addition to treating people and providing health care and saving lives, they also employ literally thousands of people across the state. If we start losing our rural hospitals, that's not just, those are lives that aren't being saved, people that are not being treated, and those are jobs that we no longer have in those communities. So this is an effort to assist with that. The tax credit program, again, will be a 3-year phase-in, $300,000 the first year, $400 the second year, and $500 the second year. The third year is the most, and that's where it would level out. That's the most that any hospital could get in the program. And so there would be an aggregate cap of 18, 24, and 30 million where it would stay after the third year. And that's an explanation of the bill.
Questions on the bill? Gentleman from Adams, you have a question?
No, at the proper time, I'd like to hold that last bill on motion reconsider.
I recognize you shortly. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, don't see any questions on the bill, gentlemen.
I move final passage.
He moves final passage. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 117 yeas, 0 nays, the bill passes. Next item, Mr. Chairman.
The next item, Mr. Speaker, is House Bill 1990, and that is item 17 on the supplemental calendar.
All right, you make the usual motion?
I do, yes, sir.
Gentleman calls the bill up, moves the rules be suspended, the bill considered engrossed, read a third time, placed on final passage. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. You're recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, it comes to us at the request of some of our counties. I want to be real clear. This is not mandating anything different in the taxes. What this bill does is gives the counties the flexibility and the discretion to choose an alternative tax scheme for their residential real property. And so some of our counties, because of the ad valorem situation that we have, we've got some problems. And again, this would not be forced on any boards of supervisor. It would be something that they could voluntarily opt in if they so choose, or they don't have to. They could continue with the current scheme of taxation. So what this would do would basically allow them to put an alternative minimum tax, whether that be $300 or $500 or whatever it is, on a piece of ad valorem real property. What we have right now in some of the counties is we have a house in 5 acres on one hand that is well kept and appreciates over 15 or 20 years, and then we've got a house in 5 acres or 10 acres on the other hand that depreciates because of the person doesn't take care of their property or other reasons, and you've got a property after 10, 15, 20 years that is essentially worthless. We've got, just in my own county, we've got some people that have a house, family living there, paying less than $100 a year in ad valorem taxes. And so what this bill would do would allow the Board of Supervisors to implement a minimum tax. Whatever that board decides should be the minimum tax. And if your ad valorem levy falls below that, you would still pay the $300. And I want to remind you, every single one of these people still need the roads paved. They need the fire department to show up. They need the police department to show up. And so this would give our counties who choose to go this route a little more flexibility. The people whose property is more than whatever the minimum is set would still pay whatever the ad valorem levy is in that county. They'd pay the most. So that's what the bill does. It's not a tax increase. If the net result to the county is increases as a result of them opting into this program, then they have to decrease the millage by a corresponding amount. So I think that's an important part of it as well. It's just another tool for our counties to help provide the services back home. That's an explanation.
Questions on the bill? Gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hines.
Introduction, Mr. Speaker.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, House, please help me make welcome the mayor of the first smoke-free city in this state, Ms. Shakita Allen, and she's with one of her co-workers who represents she's a field director for Black Lives Matter in the South Gallery. Please help them become welcome.
Questions on the bill? Gentleman from Newton, Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Will this apply only to depreciating property, or would it allow them to go blanket wide in the county, let's say, and set a minimum ad valorem tax on property?
On residential real property is all it applies to.
And it would only require those that are decreasing in value, is that correct?
Yes. I mean, it would be set at a minimum. In other words, it's probably minimal. Like I said, $300-500 a year for your ad valorem taxes.
This would not, so you're saying residential property only would not affect farmland, timberland, anything like that?
None of that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman from Warren, Mr. Denton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman, will you yield?
Yes, sir.
I just thought about this. I'm sorry I didn't ask you during committee, but our taxes is based on the value of the property. Is that not right?
Ad valorem, yes, sir.
Okay, so if somebody's property is depreciating,
yep,
and they paying a lower amount, we just gonna set a higher tax for them when their property is not valued at that rate?
No, we're not going to set anything. The Board of Supervisors would set it. So
okay,
we're not mandating anything here.
Okay, but if the Board of Supervisors do that,
yes,
and their property is valued at $100, and you saying just because the surrounding areas their property is appreciating in value,
Yeah.
we're going to raise their taxes to $300.
I guess
But
what I'm saying is, gentlemen, if you've got a house where someone lives in your district and they're paying only $100 a year in ad valorem property taxes, then is that enough to operate basic services in Warren County?
Gentlemen, with all respect, I understand your principle.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is this: if I went to sell that piece of property, that the county has put an asset on at one value, right?
Yep.
And you telling me I got to pay more? I mean, because our property taxes, they go out there, they survey, they look at it. They could say the value is $1,000. My next door neighbor value could be $2,000.
Right.
But if you're telling me I'm gonna have to pay the same thing as my next door neighbor just because his value is higher.
No, sir. You wouldn't pay the same thing. You would and under that scheme, you would pay the minimum is what you would pay. And so your neighbor would still pay whatever that ad valorem says it's worth. That's right.
Yeah, but gentlemen, you're still raising my taxes, right? Are you still raising my taxes and the value is not there?
I would tell you that if if you or me or whoever it is only paying $100 or $200 a year for the house, there's the same folks that's calling you wanting the roads fixed. I would tell you somebody else is subsidizing your taxes is what I would say.
Well, you know, and I'm gonna agree with you. That's true. I agree with you, but that hasn't changed since since they started assigning values to property. Somebody pay more, somebody pay less. But if we're gonna do this though, then you're telling me that if a subdivision and everybody in that subdivision property is appreciating and we have one person that their property is depreciating because of a lack of them upkeeping, then we're going to raise their taxes.
Yeah.
We're going to raise their taxes because they should pay more because it costs the same thing for them to ride down the road. It costs the same thing for them to get police service. It costs the same thing for them to get sheriff's service. That's what you're telling me, but the value of their property haven't went up though.
I would tell you there's a reason why they're depreciating. They're not taking care of their property. They knocked half of it down or so. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's on them.
That would be unusual.
But that's on them though, right?
Yeah, but it's on the rest of the taxpayers when they want the police to show up in the middle of the night or the ambulance or they want to ride down the road with no potholes. That's the issue. And so this is designed just to be flexible, give boards of supervisors more flexibility. They don't have to do it, gentlemen.
Well, you know, I understand that, and I appreciate your time you taking on this.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Gentleman from DeSoto, Mr. Eubanks.
Test one, check. Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, I understand the intent of this, but does it not also create a situation where, you know, if the county has to spend X amount of dollars to provide X amount of services and they continue to spend, they say, well, we're paying X amount of dollars, and so they can always continue to raise that floor.
I think you missed the point, gentlemen, where whatever that increases the county's budget, they have to decrease the millage by. It cannot be a net tax gain to the county.
But the current system would be that the tax assessor would come out and assess your property, and there would be a millage assessed to it, and that would determine what your. Are we not circumventing the system to provide a solution that could actually?
No, because the system would still be in place. You would still arrive at an ad valorem value, and as long as that ad valorem value was more than the minimum, you would still pay that. It'd be the same exact thing, same thing. But the ones that are not paying their fair share, whatever that amount is, would need to, would have to pay the minimum. Like I said, that's the $300 or whatever dollars the board sets it at.
But is there a cap at what they can assess it? They can pick whatever floor that it is, right?
Yeah, they could. Yeah. But they have to reduce taxes by a corresponding amount, gentlemen.
Gentleman from Jackson, Mr. Fondren.
This gentleman yield.
Be glad to.
I just have one simple question about
Yes,
how
sir.
it would, how it would affect homestead exemption.
Not at all.
Not at all?
Yeah, we discussed that in committee. It does have no effect on homestead exemption.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman from Forest, Mr. Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The gentleman will yield.
Be glad to.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to know, did Forest County request this bill?
I have not met with Forest County, gentlemen. If I meet with Forest County, you'll be in the room.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm still trying to figure it out, but as it addresses individual property owners, this is a tax increase, isn't it?
It depends on, no, gentlemen, it depends on, I guess, what your property is. I mean, if you're paying a bare bones amount, $100 a year, you could pay a little bit more.
Okay.
But whatever, it would be a neutral event to that county.
Okay, but I'm just saying that an individual property owner, before the passage of this bill, just say would be paying, I would say nothing, and after the passage of this bill could be paying $300.
I guess I would tell you, gentlemen, that if there's an individual property owner who's paying nothing, you're talking about a slumlord or somebody like that that's not taking care of their property, and that's a problem. If they're paying zero toward the county rolls, that's a problem.
I'm just saying with the benefit of the homestead exemption, and somebody 65 years old or older, under current law, am I correct in saying that they don't pay anything?
I guess there could be some extreme examples where somebody pays zero.
Well, not extreme, gentlemen. I mean, people whose property is worth less than $75,000 and they are of age. So, but I'm just trying to figure out how I can explain to my people that this would not result on an individual basis in an increase in their taxes.
Gentlemen, what I can tell you is as this bill makes its way through the process, I will continue to work with the Senate on the bill. And again, it's not mandating anything on anybody. It's simply giving the counties an option to look at this if they have those similar problems in their county.
Mr. Chairman, does this bill come before this body as a request from any organization?
No, I've spoken with several counties about it, but that's it. Just other counties that are interested in this issue.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I move final passage.
You've got several more folks want to ask questions.
Okay, that's fine.
Gentleman from Harrison, Mr. Hullum.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Gentleman, I just got one question. You know how I am.
Okay.
Does this affect veterans who receive 100%?
No.
Thank you.
My knowledge, it would not affect veterans. I'll check on that, and if it does, I will come back, hold it, and I'll put a reverse repealer in the bill to work on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Lawrence, Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman yield.
Certainly.
Gentlemen, I've been listening to you. I don't have a fundamental problem with this. I'm just a little bit confused, I think. And correct me if I'm wrong. I may have misheard you. You stated to one of the other gentlemen that asked questions that there was a requirement that the money be repaid at some point in time, the extra money?
No, sir. In other words, there is a provision in the bill that would keep a county, if they wanted to raise this and they netted $100,000 to the good for the county budget, they would have to reduce the millage, thereby reducing taxes by a corresponding amount. Does that make sense?
Let me refer you to line 29. That's what's sort of throwing me a little bit, where it says if a county levies additional millage rates on parcels and the money that's produced is more than they need, the Board of Supervisors shall use the excess revenue for reducing the ad valorem the following year. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir. That is it.
Okay. So if they if the raise produces more money than they need, they have to put the excess back in next year. They have to use the excess as a credit against next year's. Is that right?
To reduce the taxes by a corresponding amount, yes, sir.
Okay, but it in fact is the money they have to put back, if you want to call it that, is in fact only the excess money, if any, that they raised with the increased ad valorem tax.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Holmes, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With it, Chairman Yeo.
Be glad to, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman, I just got a couple of clarifying questions. Now, with this minimum tax, would it be countywide, or would the Board of Supervisors be able to pick and choose which subdivision?
No, they couldn't do that, gentlemen. It would be
countywide.
It would be applied to residential real property only if they opt into it. That's all.
Okay, and it have to be all over the county.
Yes, sir.
And is it a maximum amount that the Board of Supervisors could set this minimum tax at?
No, there's no maximum, but that's something else I'm going to look at too. The way it's drafted now, and the more I think about it, I think we could look at a maximum, and that's something I'd be willing to look at as it goes through the process.
And the other question, would this minimum tax apply regardless of the size or the condition? Let's say I got a acre house lot, and then a neighbor down the street got a quarter of an acre. Would that minimum tax apply to both of us if we?
If it qualifies as residential real property, so if you've got, yes, it would apply equally if it fits that category.
Okay. Is that equitable or fair, considering?
Well, gentlemen, I would ask you, is it equitable or fair in response, respectfully, to have a slumlord who's not taking care of their property, and that property depreciates, and that person's got people living in deplorable conditions and paying $100 a year in ad valorem taxes? Is it fair that your taxes are inflated because that person is handling his business in that way?
Surely somebody got a car tag or something. They paying ad valorem tax somewhere. But I guess what I'm getting at, gentlemen, I understand. Don't get me wrong. I smell what you're stepping in. But,
yes, sir.
My concern in some neighborhoods, the entire neighborhood is depreciating, okay?
Yep.
And you have residents in there, usually they're some of your older residents who are going out their way to preserve their property. They're keeping their lawn in pristine condition, but because of the conditions around them, their houses are depreciating as well. And I'm just kind of feel that's an added burden on some good, hardworking citizens.
I understand your concerns, and I will work with you or anybody else as the bill goes through the process to try to alleviate any of those concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman from Washington, Mr. Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman, you here?
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question. I was a little perplexed. So, I have a good friend of mine who bought several parcels around Annandale Golf Course. And that was before Annandale really blew up. And now, they're building houses. They got, $1 million homes out there. But he hasn't retired yet to build his retirement home. How would this impact his property value? Will he be charged more money because he hadn't built his house yet?
No, sir. If he hadn't built a house there, it wouldn't qualify as residential real property.
But he is going to build a house. He purchased it for that very purpose. I'm just trying to make sure we ain't finna.
No, if it's just a lot, there's no house there, nobody living there, it shouldn't affect them.
All right, good.
Thank you.
I ain't gonna have to pay for my extra property.
All right, I don't see any further questions on the bill.
I'd move final passage.
Gentleman moves final passage. Open the machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 68 yeas, 31 nays, the bill passes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's all I have today.
All right, I think that concludes our work on the calendar. Announcements by the clerk's office.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After adjournment, apportionment and elections will meet in 401A. County affairs will meet 5 minutes after adjournment in 401A. For tomorrow, drug policy will meet at 9 in room 114. Universities and colleges will meet at 10 and 204. Corrections will meet at 11 and 401A. Energy will meet at 1 o'clock in room 103. Marine resources will meet at 1 in room 114. Education will meet at 1 in room 204. Medicaid will meet at 3:15 in room 113. Banking will meet tomorrow 15 minutes after adjournment in room 402.
Announcements by the members. And by way of information, I'm still waiting on council with regard to the gentleman's point of order. We may suspend business here for just a minute. Let me get a status on where legal counsel is on that particular issue. But while we do that, we're going to have announcements. Gentleman from Octibaha, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Adjoining memory. Members of the House. I don't think my speaker is on. Members of the House.
Move to another microphone, gentlemen.
Members of the House, it brings me great sadness to announce that Representative Tyrone Ellis, who have served this body for 38 years, his mother just passed, Miss Ethel Ellis Lake. She was born in 1928. She passed away at the right age of 98 years old. If you have the will to do so, please reach out to Representative Ellis. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that. We will do that. Gentleman from Covington, Mr. Sanford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apportionment elections will meet immediately after adjournment for one bill. Very briefly, we'll be in room 402, not room 401, room 402. Thank you.
Elections immediately after adjournment. Gentleman from Adams, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, as I announced earlier, I'd like to hold item 16 on the Ways and Means calendar, House Bill 1988, on a motion to reconsider.
Thank you, gentlemen. We will do that. Please notify the chairman and the vice chairman. Gentleman from Grenada, Mr. Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Judge B will not meet today, and the plan is to meet 9 o'clock on Thursday instead of 11 o'clock. We will not meet today.
Lady from Pearl River, Ms. Wilkes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Drug policy will not meet tomorrow.
Thank you, lady. Gentleman from Walthall, Mr. Pygott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind the House of the catfish luncheon tomorrow at the Farmers Market from 11:30 to 1 o'clock. It's sponsored by Miss U.S. Farm Raised Catfish.
Thank you, gentlemen. Members, if you would, stick around. I'm informed legal counsel's coming up with that point of order. Gentleman from Lowndes, Mr. Kareem.
Mr. Speaker, that's for me. I just wanted to request that all members of the House is added to that adjourned memory, please.
Thank you, gentlemen. We will do that. All members will be added to the gentleman from Octibaha's adjourned memory. Go by the clerk's office if you wish to not be added on that one. Gentleman from Clay, Mr. Gibbs. You recognize, lady.
It's actually me, Mr. Speaker.
You got it.
Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, it is a late.
Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a late acknowledgement. In our North Gallery, we do have visiting with us Mr. Jerry Keever, who is the Sharkey-Issaquah County Hospital Administrator, Ms. Addie Stover, who's the economic developer for Sharkey County, also the director of the Sharkey County Emergency Management Agency, Mr. Frank Eason, and the mayor of Rolling Fork, Mississippi, Mr. Eldrick Walker, and the Board of Supervisor, Mr. President, Mr. Leroy Smith. Thank you so much and welcome them.
Welcome to you all.
Sharkey County in the house.
Gentleman from Adams, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, another item 17, House Bill 1990, I'd like to hold that on the motion to reconsider.
We will do that, gentlemen. Please notify the chairman and vice chairman. Gentleman from Marshall, Mr. Faulkner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Adjourn in memory.
You're recognized.
As we adjourn today, I'd like for us to adjourn in memory of the late Mr. Epson Riddle. He passed away on last week. He was 102 years old. Thank you.
Gentleman from Prentice, Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an announcement. Insurance would like to meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. 1 p.m. tomorrow.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let me suspend business for 2 minutes here, and then we'll deal with a point of order. Let me get with legal counsel. 2 minutes. Y'all give the clerk your attention. Clerk's going to read ruling regarding the gentleman's point of order.
The gentleman from Marshall, Mr. Faulkner, made a point of order that the bill requires a two-thirds vote because it gives a gratuity to a nonprofit that requires a two-thirds vote by the House rule and the state constitution. Senate Bill 2453 authorizes the Public Service Commission to cancel any municipality certificate to provide utility service under certain circumstances. The bill was originally adopted by the House on March 20th with one amendment, a strike-all amendment, and one amendment to the strike-all, Amendment 3. The language subject to this point of order was contained in Amendment 3 and was offered by the gentleman from Marshall. I did allow the gentleman to make the point of order. However, the point of order was not timely made. Previous speakers' rulings provide that if a point of order is going to be made on an amendment or a bill, it shall be made before that amendment or bill is adopted by the House. Once an amendment or bill is adopted, a point of order related to the content of that amendment or bill is not timely made thereafter. See speakers' rulings on March 2nd, 1995, March 3rd, 1996, and February 1st, 1999. The gentleman made a point of order after passage of the bill on March 20th. After consideration of the passage of the bill, after reconsideration of the amendment, and after the vote to table the amendment, thus the point of order was not timely made. For the reasons stated in this ruling, the gentleman's point of order is not well taken.
Gentleman from Holmes, Mr. Clark, for what purpose?
On an inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
You're recognized.
So, when the bill was reconsidered and came back before the House, is this not a totally new vote on final passage?
It would be a totally new vote, but the offensive language was a subject of Amendment 3, which was defeated and is no longer a part of the bill. Regardless, once it's adopted, it's in there and not subject to a point of order at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Legal counsel is all on the same page on this. I'll let head counsel talk to you about it. All right. We're back, gentlemen. We still need to adopt the strike all amendment now that's back before the House. So we're back on the strike all, I believe. And I don't see any, we certainly passed the point of questions on the strike all. So you move adoption of the strike all?
I do.
All right. Question occurs on the adoption of strike all amendment 1. If you favor strike all amendment 1, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Strike all is adopted. Anything further on the bill, gentlemen?
Final passage.
Gentleman moves final passage. Open machine, Madam Clerk. If you favor the bill, vote aye. If you're opposed, vote nay. Has everyone voted? Has everyone voted? Close the machine, Madam Clerk. By a vote of 84 yeas, 29 nays, the bill passes. Anything further, Mr. Chairman?
Immediate release.
Gentleman asked for immediate release. Is there objection? Don't hear any. We will follow that procedure. All right, we've gone through announcements. Any member have any further announcement? Don't see any. I recognize the gentleman from Rankin for the motion.
I move that the House stand adjourned until 2 p.m. tomorrow.
Gentleman's motion is the House stand adjourned until 2 p.m. tomorrow. If you favor that motion, indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House adjourned until 2 p.m. tomorrow.